the inanimate growing and plant and animal kingdoms. It's pretty much just a matter of taking control and doing it, refining it. But wait, so many cups. Okay. Oh, you put them under there? Okay. But when it comes to refining the medaber, the speaking kingdom of the other nations, basically, it's a much more difficult task because they have free choice, and therefore they can if all goes well, we said like in the days of Shlomo, they can acquiesce to our plan, and we can refine them. The world was at peace, etc. If not, there's not a lot we can do. That's the thing. Basically, we can't really force them to be refined, and that's what he was saying. Which we don't have the power, basically, and the reason is because their source is higher than our source. Their source is from Tohu, which basically has a certain measure of like very strong light in it, which is just not subduable unless it's sort of chosen on their part. That's basically where we left off. But the last sort of good point is, besides the little point that we mentioned on our own ideas, but let's just stay inside today, is that there is this notion, as we quoted from Eov, that he said like this: if the power of God with you, Zero Kakel Lacha, if you have the power of God, I'm going to start inside here from the line. On page 131, first paragraph, about 8 lines up from the bottom, Sa'ara is the first word on the line. So they said to him, if you have the power of God with you, Haduch Rashayim Tachtam, then the wicked will be subdued under you. Tamnam Ba'afar, and you will bury them in the sand. Right? And okay, so there is this idea that if you have the power of God with you, you can subdue the enemy. You want to say something?
Yeah, you're going to subdue them or you're going to bury them.
Either way, they're not going to bother you anymore. In other words, whatever bad parts of them need to be buried, I guess.
Okay. What's
the holy spark of Tohu in them, which is what you were trying to get out of them. I made 8 copies of this mimer, so there should be maybe 4 more tucked away in some wonderful place. Hainu shasimin im yesh li'iyov kocho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what are we trying to say? That if they were saying to me, if you have the power of God with you, if you have the power of Hashem, im zerua kakel lacha, hu shviros harashayim, then you'll be able to take down the wicked. Shemizem mashmet. From this it implies sheshviros harashayim hu devar she'efshar liyos rak aydei HaKadosh Baruch Hu levado. That taking down the wicked, i.e. this kingdom of the speaking nations, is possible if you have it's only within the power of Hashem alone. In other words, the Jewish people, even the tzaddikim, cannot accomplish this. Lo aydei tzaddikim. Okay, so we sort of said this because the root of the tzaddikim comes from tikkun. The wicked come from tohu, which is above tikkun. And that's what we said, that Esav therefore is the first son. He's not just the first in birth order, he's the first in power as well. He's stronger. And back to the mimer, so just the beginning of the mimer, this is what Haman was claiming against Mordechai: your grandfather bowed down to my grandfather. Yaakov bowed down to his brothers. And Torah Or explained why did he do that. We said this last time, sorry. Why did he do that? Why did he bow down to Esav?
Because he thought Esav was fixed.
Right. In a fixed state, he's worthy of bowing down to because they're stronger. Esav basically represents the union of Mashiach, really. Har Seir is where Mashiach is going to come from, and so forth and so on. When Esav will be transformed,
Wait, so Haman actually said that?
Haman said to Mordechai,
He did
you,
say that.
you should bow down to... What was Haman's
Because
claim?
your
Because
grandfather-
Mordechai wasn't bowing down to Haman. So he's like, you should be bowing down to me just like your grandfather bowed down to my grandfather. Because Yaakov did in fact bow down to Esav. And why? Because Yaakov thought Esav was in his refined state. In which case he's worthy of bowing down to him because really they are more powerful. And as we said before, Yaakov was sort of trying to humble himself and take in the powers of Esav, representing the Tohu energy. And if you can channel that energy, as we always say, and it says in many places in Hasidus that what is the Mashiach sort of defined by the lights of Tohu in the vessels of Tikkun. The lights of Tohu are these like infinite powerful lights, but in the vessels of Tikkun, which if you could bring it down and grasp it and hold on to it, that would be Mashiach. Shemitzad zeh yesh ma'ila be'esav l'gabi Yaakov. If he would be refined, there's a ma'ila that Esav has over Yaakov. Liosu mito shelamayla mitikun. Okay, so that's all basically what we said before. Since he is from Tohu above Tikkun, going into Dalit. Again, if you don't have a copy, I would say, and you want one, share with somebody.
Or take one copy, because I have my glasses today, so...
Okay. But, going on.
Who needs a copy?
Are we in there?
Yeah. Thank you.
Dalit. Bira inyan b'pratiyus yoser. To explain the matter in a little bit further detail, do we do this also? I think we did. Sorry, I was a little bit out of my mind last time we had class.
You got to the last line, I think, of...
Yeah, alright, so we'll just keep going here. We'll do a little review if we have to. We said that the speaking kingdom in this world, it cannot be refined against his will and his choice through the avoda of Bnei Israel, whose root is from Tikkun. It's only when that class of medaber is in a situation should be yosulamata, when he is in this world, yesh bo ha'oros ha'takifim va'oros ha'merubim detohu. It's only when he still bears inside of him his, this because this is where kind of we went off. This is where, when he still has his powers, his great strong lights of tohu still stationed inside of him. Sha'az ein koach afilu b'tzadikim b'shvoras harashoim. That's when even the tzadikim cannot break the Rishoim. V'shvirasam hi b'kocho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu levado. And it's only with Hashem's power alone that it can be done. Masha ein kein la'achrei sheyatzu mehem ha'oros hatakifin. However, this is not true when they've already sort of released their intense lights of tohu. In other words, when they come down here, they sort of come down here with like the principle still with them. That like the tohu energy is like strong, the force is strong with them. Right? And until it's sort of released, you can't mess with them because they're like holding on to this literally tohu energy. But once they'll release it, once they sort of used it up, the intensity of the power, then the whole thing we said is not anymore in effect. Then the tzaddikim can get their hands on them and so forth.
How do they use it up?
So we're going to see. Then if they use it up, then the tzaddikim can subdue them and break them. Remember I told you that story about Stalin, Yimach Shemo, and that story about Hurrah. We talked about that not long ago. So you see that the Rebbe basically was like took him down. He died that moment, but it was obviously Mistama. He was released or something else happened there. But in other words, you see that there is a kind of it's interesting. You think about the stories like Napoleon and the Alter Rebbe. He had to run from him. The Alter Rebbe had to run from Napoleon. Like he was a certain strength that, like even the tzaddikim, they just sort of had to like get out of the way. It wasn't time to release it. Anyway, whereas when it's finished up, they can take them out. So anyway, this is what's going on. Dehine lechora eino muvan. Seemingly it's not understood. I think this we're going forward now. Seemingly it's not understood. Mashin isbar le'il she'iyav shal liyosh shvirus harashayim. This that we explained a moment ago, that it's impossible for there to be the breaking of the wicked. Ela al yedei HaKadosh Baruch Hu levado. Only through Hashem alone. Harimetzinu b'Torah kama sipurim v'kama meoros. We find in the Torah many stories and many happenings. Shetzadikim hachniu es rashayim al yedei tfilasam. That we just mentioned one. That the tzaddikim could subdue the wicked through their davening. Right? So why are we saying all of a sudden that they're really helpless against them? Achayinin hu sheyesh chiluk im hasha misachekes lo o ein misachekes lo. So he says the difference is it's whether the time is in his favor or the time is not in his favor. Misachekes is like, I don't know, like sort of like is happy or playful with him. If it's like a good, basically a favorable time for the wicked or it's not. That's when we see all of a sudden that there becomes a difference in the power of the tzaddikim. As it says in the Gemara, Im ra'isa rasha shasham misachekes lo al tisgarabo. Right? It says in the Gemara in Brachos, if you see a wicked person that like he's kind of he's rolling in it, you know what I'm saying? It's a good time for him. He's sort of in his strength. Don't mess with him. Because in that particular situation where he's like in his strength, you're not going to be able to overcome him. In a similar way, it says, Dor Revi Yashuvu Heina. It says the fourth generation will return to here. Right? In Parshas Lech Lecha, in the Bris Bein HaMasari, right? When basically the covenant between the parts, when Avram is being promised to Hashem, his children are going to return to the land. He says, in the fourth generation, your children will return to the land. And why? Because the sin of the Amorites, which is basically the people of Canaan, it will not be whole until then. So what does that mean? So until their sin is whole, we can't come back here. Which means that the Jewish people could not enter and conquer the land of the Amori, right? So long as their sin was not full. In other words, they didn't get to the peak of their wickedness yet. They still had some credit points, basically. If their sin wasn't full, it means they still had some merits. Which means all the while with the species, I don't know, what's the word for it? Suga medaber, the speaking species? Alright, I don't know. Any ideas? Talkies? No, you say like the plant kingdom. What's the man kingdom called? Doesn't have like a word in English, huh?
Kingdom of man.
The kingdom of man. Let's go with it. What'd you say? Humanity. Okay, humanity. Hainu.
Homo erectus?
Kozman, I like that, humanity. Kozman shesug hamadaber. So long as the humanity, sheba'olam hazeh, hu memamru matzav, it is still in a situation, sheyesh bo oros hatakifim to toe, they still have their strong tohu lights. In other words, they're still basically have the power of the infinite lights of tohu in them. They cannot therefore be refined through the level of tikkun, the Jewish people, who's lower than them in the level. This is what it says also in Zohar, that Moshe was afraid of Paro. Right? He didn't want to go in. The whole parsha, Bo El Paro, Parshas Bo. Rabbi has a lot of sikhas about this. This is based on the Zohar. Bo El Paro, Moshe didn't want to go in until Hashem said, like, come with me. I'll go with you. And why was he so afraid? Because the Tanin Hagadol. Because who was Paro likened himself to the great serpent that was underneath the Nile. That serpent was basically the Nachash HaKadmoni. He was like the original snake of the Garden of Eden. He was like the manifestation of evil. Moshe was who's from Tikkun, basically. Although it's interesting, Moshe himself.
Also, up until that point, Pharaoh hadn't used up all of his evil.
Right, apparently. Or no, even on the contrary, even he hadn't used it up even when Moshe was sent there. That's why Moshe said, I'm not going, basically. This is not a fair fight.
By the way, Obama looks exactly like Paro. I'm serious.
How do you know what Paro looks like?
Because Ram showed me there's like sculptures of Paro, like what he looks like.
From the old days?
Yeah, and they put Obama like next to it, and it's like a
spitting image?
Yeah.
Good. All right. I was always wondering what Paro looked like. Now we have a spitting image.
I'll show you. Yeah. I'm serious.
Okay. So Moshe was afraid of Obama, apparently.
Yeah.
And Chas v'shalom. And the Tanina Gadol, right? Because he was a big snake. Until Hashem said a specific command, come to Paro, the Ayale Kuchabrichu, which means that really Hashem went with him, right? Hashem brought him up because he couldn't go by himself. When Paro was still in a situation, Shahayu Bo Oros Tekifim de Tohu, these strong powers of Tohu Shekadam the Tikkun, which comes before Tikkun, Nisyare Moshe Mipanav. Therefore Moshe was afraid of him. V'lo hayecholo, and he wouldn't have been able to overcome him. Ki'im al yidei kocho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu levado. So this is the point I was just making. Not necessarily did Paro lose his power just then, but Hashem can always take down. It's just that tzaddikim can't do it. So when Hashem said, "Okay, I'll go with you," then that changed the matter. That Moshe said, "I'm not going by myself." V'alzeh nemar v'im zoroa kakeil lacha. Someone, if you get a chance, we're going to look up how you actually pronounce this pasuk. Didn't get around to that, but he says, so if you're strong like God, this is what again Eov's friend said to him regarding when it's able to take down the tzaddikim, that they'll be subdued and buried. So this is if you have the power of God. So let me just, if you're going to go ahead and look it up, I'll tell you where it is. Iyuv Mem Vav to Yud Daled. Okay. So anyway, yeah, if you have the power of God, Haduch Rashayim Tachtam, Tam Nam Ba'afar, then, in other words, if Hashem is going to go with him, then he can subdue the wicked and bury them in the sand. Shekdesh Yuchol Lios Haduch Rashayim Tachtam, in order to subdue the wicked, Hainu Shebeshash HaRashayim Hemadayim Betokef, which means when they're at the hour when the wicked are still in their strength, Hamatziyu Shelehem, Hini B'Matziyu Shelehem Tachtam Yad Haduch Melashin Katisha, in order to make their existence crushed, or basically I was saying subdued. Haduch, he says, means crushed. Lashin Katisha. But kafisha mamshik b'kasev tam nam ba'afar, as it goes on to say, they'll be buried in the sand. It means to crush them. Hainu shekafisha hem b'metzius yu tumunim ba'afar v'yizbatlu b'metzius, which means that as they are, in order to be buried and nullified out of existence, ze yechol liyos rak im zarua kakel lecha. That's only possible if you're going to have the strength of God with you. Only Hashem alone can do it. The tzaddikim are powerless to do it on their own. So why can Hashem do it? In other words, what does it mean Hashem can do it? Hashem is also with the tzaddikim. What does it mean Hashem? So because the level of Hashem we're talking about is above Tohu and Tikkun together. Found it?
Where it's Mem Dalet.
No, Mem. From Dalet to Yud Aleph or something. So this level of Hashem we're talking about is the level which is beyond Tohu and Tikkun together. Which level is that, by the way, in the four names that we discussed before?
So the question
It's Sag.
Zog and
Sag.
Zag is Tohu.
Zog.
Oh, Av.
Av. Right, so basically we're talking about the level of Av. What is Av? Where is Av?
Av is like Ein Sof style.
It's before the Tzimtzum, right? It's before the Tzimtzum.
Yeah.
So Sag is already the first world after the Tzimtzum, right? Okay, so we're talking about going to a level which is beyond the whole business. It's l'mayla mito and tikkun gam yachad shay afal pisha shoresh olam hatohu hu gavo b'yoser. Even though, in the brackets, the source of tohu is very, very high. And he says particularly in Bechinas Yud Kei Desag. Okay, we're not going to really get into this, but it's from the higher part of Sag. In other words, in Sag itself, not just, we were saying that just Stam Tohu is Sag, but really it's from the higher parts of Sag, the Yud Kei of Sag, right? Because what is Sag at the end? It's a gematria of Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? That's how you get the number. Sag is a number, 63. So he's saying in Sag itself, really the pure world of Tohu is from the higher Yud Kei. So it's extremely high. Makom makom lagabi Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Nonetheless, in face of the Ein Sof, Gam Hashem Yud Kei Atzmo, Hu Rak Bechinas Shem Va'ar Ba'alma. Even the Yud Kei is only a name, and it's just a ray. It's merely a ray. In other words, in terms of the actual Or Ein Sof, which is the thing itself, the Yud Kei Vav Kei is just a name. So you might say Av is also a name, but I guess that at the point is before the Tzimtzum, the name and is one with the essence, right? Like the whole idea of Hu Shmo Echad, right? He and his name are one. Whereas when you get after the Tzimtzum, what's the whole idea of the Tzimtzum is that you block out the thing itself and you just get a ray. The name is all that remains after the Tzimtzum. That's what the Tzimtzum does. It makes the essence be on one side of the Tzimtzum and the name be on the other side of the Tzimtzum.
And what level is Goral?
The Goral, we were saying, is basically, he was saying before that it was like the above the will, so I guess he was also saying it was like the Or Ein Sof. Yeah. So he's saying, even though Tohu comes from such a high place, Yud Kei of Sag, nonetheless, the whole Yud Kei, the whole name is merely just a ray compared to the essence. And that's why this level which is beyond Tohu and Tikkun together, it's within its ability, of course, to subdue and to cut out the wicked, even when they're in their strength. In other words, that's the point. Even when Paro's still Melech Mitzrayim, and so forth and so on, when they still have these strong lights of Tohu, the level, if you can reach up somehow to this higher level, you can take them out even when they're still strong, if you have the power of God. Together with the life force that they have from the world of Tohu. But if you wind up not, the hour is not sort of smiling for them, they've already lost their edge, they've fulfilled their sin, that is, then even the tzaddikim can do it because they don't have any more of the powers of Tohu. So you can take them out in one of two ways. You can either reach up to a higher level than Tohu and Tikkun together, that's if they're still strong, or if they basically lose their strength, then even Tikkun, which is lower, can refine them because Tohu has lost, the agents of Tohu have lost their real power. Because they've come to the maximum sin level. And he says, this is a kamashal ha'aluka. This is like a leech, basically. Shemotzeses es adam, ad shnismales dam v'nofeles umesa. So basically a leech, it sucks out blood until it becomes totally itself filled with blood, and then it just falls off and dies. Right? So this is the same idea. And anyway, we find oftentimes that the klippas are called leeches. Even like in the Tanakh, there's such a concept like that. So they're basically sucking your blood. What do you mean suck? Why a leech? It's a very good analogy because they're taking the life force from Kedusha and they're sort of getting it from there, but they'll get as much as they can. Like they're just sort of like on a suicide mission because eventually they'll take so much of it that they've taken their full amount and they die.
So maybe it would be a good strategy just to feed them so much that they get too big and they keel over.
That's kind of what the whole story is, right? It says the wicked they get paid their reward in this world, so they don't have any reward in the next to come. That's why one of the questions is why are the wicked,
Thriving.
What?
Why the wicked thriving?
Right, rather the wicked thriving and the righteous are poor. It's like one of the great questions of tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo. The whole Tanya is based on this breakdown of these categories, we don't even know what they're talking about. It's the terminology tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo, it says one of the questions that no one can ever understand. It's a very deep thing that the Tanya comes in and like lays it down and like changes the whole thing out of context and makes it like about like soul levels and so forth. Because the simple meaning is, what does it mean that there's a righteous and it's not good for him, and there's a wicked and it is good for him? Doesn't make sense, like that's the great question which could make people like lose their faith. But this is what you're saying, is that it's good for them. I mean, on like a simple level, before you get into like Hasidus and Netanya, the simple level is Hashem's paying them off in this world. So don't get like all excited that you're seeing that they're thriving, because He's basically feeding them till they die, and like sort of filling up their whatever tiny merits they had. He's going to give it all to them now, so that they lose their power, lose any strength that they had.
Right, or you can even make them stronger, because they're just, it's going to reach a point of them, too much blood.
Right. V'hainu shekasher hamidaber sheba'olam hazeh, that when humanity in this world, shenafel me'olam hatoh lamatu, who fell from the world of tohu down here, when he's mamale as tafkida, when he fulfills his job, in other words, he was sent here to be tohu and to create some kind of a part of the whole web of hashkacha pratis. When he's done doing what he was supposed to do, looking like Paro and making a mess of the world, sha'az yotzim menu nitzutzi hakadusha, which means you've taken out of him this whatever sparks of kedusha, shala oros atakifim the tohu shenaflu bo. In other words, what does it mean that he's sort of like finished his job? It means that he's basically doesn't have any more powerful lights of tohu, meaning to say what? They've been refined. Whether they've been refined not because necessarily a Jew came and like used him for something holy, but he spent out his energy, right? So then he no longer had whatever energy he came to put into this world, like he released it, and all the sparks of kedusha. That anyway, what is he? It's all holiness. It's just holiness in a package that can't be clearly seen as holiness. So it comes out, it blurs the lines, and it does negative things.
What's the kufid?
Strong, when these holy sparks of the oros hatakifim, of the strong lights of tohu that fell in him, are fulfilled their purpose, v'lo nishar ela tamtzis de tamtzis shenogei lekiyum metzius bilvad, and it only remains the concentrated of the concentrated part, basically like a little tiny minuscule amount of that energy, which is nogea to metziuso levad, which just is enough to keep him in existence. In other words, he no longer has like enough to sort of dish out and make havoc with, but he has enough to just keep him alive. If he would lose all his power, obviously he would just disappear. Right? The low toke of a metzius, that little bit that he has left, it's not the strength of his existence anymore. Azah yecholo gam atzadik. Then even the tzaddik can overcome him. So only when they're in a weak state, that's when the tzaddikim can overcome the Rishonim. But in their strong state, no. As we find an example of this regarding Bilam, the wicked. He was also a tohu level character there. And we couldn't overcome him. Until Moshe took out from him, so to speak, his good portion, the part of him that needed to be refined. And how did it happen? Because Hashem put in his mouth the words of prophecy. And a whole parsha of the Torah came out of him that was for the benefit of the Jewish people and for Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He prophesied about Mashiach. Some of the greatest prophecies of the future came out of Bilam, the wicked, right? So the fact is that until he sort of spit out those prophecies, he was like a big wicked entity that could not be taken down. So a little bit of like Moshe's prophecy, right? Because the fact that it wound up in the Torah obviously means it was Moshe's prophecy. Moshe sort of like gave it, like sort of eked it out of him and refined him. In other words, took out his usefulness. He had all this power. It was meant to be channeled into Kedusha. So as soon as that happened, he became weak, right? Shortly after he gave those prophecies, he went home. He was not a big shot anymore, and he shortly after got killed. Before that, he was like sort of a menace in the world that we couldn't take down. So once he finished his job, in other words, he released his spark, he was weak then. As the Tzemach Tzedek explains, okay, after the parentheses. Va'az yatzir menu achelak hatov. It came out of him whatever remaining good was in him. That's what he said. When they finished their mismale sa'asam, when their time has come, right? It means they have no more left in them that's worth anything, that's needed. Then, like we said before, the fourth generation, then we can easily conquer the land and so forth. What is it that's this part that's good in them? It's these strong lights of Torah that we need to release them and get them out of this dark case that they're in and use them for good. Shezeu masha amar Bilam v'ata hineni olech la'ami. That's why all of a sudden, after Bilam said the prophecy, he said, now I'm going back to my people. V'az Yisrael yicholim lo. Then, of course, it means we could take him over. As it says, as Bilam ben Beor hargu b'cherev, that they killed him with a sword. Not so before we're able to take out the good part of them. Before their sin is complete. And again, what does it mean their sin is complete? We keep saying they still have some merit, which we're now understanding is some sparks of tohu which have not yet been released. When they still have those parts, they're very, very strong. Because of the strong lights of Torah that are in them, then we can't subdue them. Okay.
So how do we get them to cough out that spark?
Again, it's not so simple. Moshe Rabbeinu, can try to. It said Moshe did it, but before we said Moshe could only do it by sort of Hashem had a sort of a beferush commandment. When it came to for example, Paro, Moshe was afraid, right? So he couldn't do it. So I guess the idea is that, let's look exactly what it says that Moshe did it.
Like for ISIS.
Hold on 1 second. Well, I mean, Ad Moshe hotzi mimenu sachel katuv shabo. Right, so really it's not so simple. It's not so simple. It's not so simple that when it says Moshe did it to Bilam, it doesn't really mean that Moshe accomplished this with his own efforts, because that's the whole point, is even tzaddikim can't take care of this unless they have the power of God, and we don't see that Moshe was given a commandment to God to go take down Bilam until he was already weakened. So what does it mean? It didn't say Moshe did it. It said Moshe took out from him his spark. Why? Because he prophesied things in the Torah. So it's not so to speak Moshe did it. It's that Moshe wrote the Torah, not Bilam. Okay. So when Moshe once Bilam said these words of prophecy, his sparks of tohu had been released from him. Now Moshe could take those words that he said and put them into the Torah. It was before he said those words of prophecy, those powerful levels, divine levels, were still inside of him. They hadn't come out. So there was an aspect of divinity that he was unconquerable, basically. Once he said those things about the Jewish people, those words themselves wound up coming out of Moshe's mouth at a later date and being put in the Torah. Once he released them from himself, he no longer was useful in this world. He was sent down into the world with those powerful words, those powerful sparks. Until he said them, he was unpenetrable. So
Bilam wasn't able to curse the people.
he was a bad guy, though. I mean, he was basically he was a menace, right?
Right, but
he wasn't able to curse.
Manifest his tohu.
Right. No. Not when you say manifested to, I wouldn't say that's true. I mean, he was basically like a wicked sorcerer who, in the end, by the way, let's not forget, he gave the counsel to make us sin, and he was a menace. But I'm just saying, even if just his existence in the world, you understand, it was like a sort of stain on the Achdus of Hashem. He was like this prophet going around, basically, that was not for God and take people astray. So he had to be destroyed, but he couldn't be destroyed until he released his spark.
Right, so what I'm confused about is when can Hashem control that force? So Bilam wasn't able to curse the people. That was Hashem not letting him do that. Right?
Yeah, I mean when you say curse the people, that's already something that what he was trying to do is something that was impossible to do, because Hashem had already blessed the people, right? So it said even when we did something wrong, like Levi and Shimon, it just says, Arur Apam, Hashem only cursed their anger. He didn't curse them, because you can't curse something that's blessed, right? Like it says by Eliezer wanted to marry, into Avram's family, and Avram said, "Sorry, you're cursed. We're blessed. Blessed and cursed don't go together. Like it's not going to happen." So in other words, he was trying to do something impossible. That's the point. Like maybe he overstepped his bounds to a certain level, and he wound up trying to curse them and release. That's what made him release the spark. He did sort of like cross the line. But yeah. So as far as what your point is that, again, we spoke about a little bit last time. That you were here, I think, but maybe not. That the Rebbe said that we've released all the sparks. In other words, there's no more of this kind of thing left to do. So something like ISIS, it just looks like a big bad guy. It's not a Bilam. It's basically it's a nobody. All we have to do is stand up to it, and we can subdue all the present day evils. There's no evil in the world today, our Mastama from 1990, that is just like an insurmountable foe that we can't do anything to fix. It's over. That period of we definitely worked hard for thousands of years, and the Rebbe said we finished the sparks, like the Kabbalistic promise that when the sparks will be refined, then Mashiach will come. The Rebbe said already that time happened, that the sparks are refined. So there's no more powerful levels of Tohu that are unsubduable at this point. It's just a matter of our own efforts.
Can you say at the same point that after Eliyahu defeated Baal, he ran from Jezebel because it's hard to understand. I mean, never can understand why did he run from her?
Okay. Yeah, this answers a lot of questions.
And maybe that's why ISIS is so bad, because they don't have any that good spark in them. Because all the sparks are.
No, but having the spark in them is what makes them so bad.
Oh, I thought that makes them so strong because they have that goodness.
It's not goodness. It is goodness, right? But it's a goodness which it's too good for this world to handle, basically.
Right.
So it comes out like with an immense power of badness. That's what tohu energy means. It's so much light that it can't fit into any containers. When you can't fit into any containers, that means I'll take your container and your container, and I'll just slay the whole world until I have there's no moral value, morals that will stop the person from overcoming other people's boundaries.
Oh, but I thought the Bilam example was that the spark was out of him was when he blessed us.
It's not because he did a good thing. It's because he had a certain power of kedusha that all the while it was in him. It made him sort of unconquerable because he had strong powers in him. He didn't bless us on purpose, remember, right? It wasn't his choice basically to bless us. He was a prophet and he opened his mouth with the intention of cursing us. It's not like he did his last good deed and then he could be gone. It's like he did his job here, which was to somehow release this holy spark, which while it was contained in him, it made him supernaturally powerful. And as soon as he let go of it, it means that, in other words, on the contrary, it says that until their wickedness is full, they can't be destroyed. So this was the ultimate wicked act, that he was trying to curse the people, right? It's just that Hashem didn't let him. That wasn't his merit. So he gave his last, most powerful, energetic force that he had. He let it out of him, and then what was he left with? Then he didn't have any more power anymore, so he could take him over. It's not like he did a good deed. You following what's going on here?
Yeah, but that his tohu spark that came out of him,
right,
came out as a nice sweet.
Not really. It's just that when Moshe was able to take it and put it into the Torah. In other words, when you say it came out nice and sweet, I mean, okay, it's any time that you're gonna release a spark from tohu, right? That means it's going to be fixed. You're gonna put it into tikkun, right? So it's not that everything essentially is good, right? It's just that if it's not able to be seen in the right context of tikkun, then it's bad. So when he let it out of his own goof, which is basically was not a tikkun goof, so then it could be utilized for good. All the energy of the wicked ultimately is power, money. All those things can be good. It's just that when it's in the control of the bad people, it's being misused. So it's not. You can't say like objectively that the thing is good or bad. It's energy, right? Energy can be used for good, it could be used for bad. So long as it's inside of them, it's being used for bad. But as they're releasing it, they're allowing that energy to be harnessed by Jews who can then use it for good. So long as it's inside of them, they're insurmountable because they have a certain powerful energy which is not yet expressed, and they're not using it for good. So they're just like waiting for them to like do all their damage until the job is done. Then once they have no more power, money, and stuff, they're just easily could fall, because what they came into this world to give, which is a holy spark, is now out of them. Once it's out of them, they can go down. You understand? Yeah.
Is there any way you could make an analogy to like the Darth Vader or something, the dark side of the Force, the lightsabers?
I was also thinking that because you like suck their soul. Like.
Yeah, I mean for sure. All these things are based on why are these stories so deeply ingrained in the psyche of all of us? It's because superheroes, because there's a force between evil and good that's basically going on in the world. It's a battle. If you animate it and make it manifest it into characters, it's very helpful to understand. They're all metaphors.
But usually evil is like sucking the souls of the good, and it's the opposite. This is the good is like sucking the souls of evil.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Oh man.
Yeah, like
By the way, there's a Chabadnik who's like a cartoon, a comic book maven, and he wrote like a huge book. It's a book. Yeah, Simcha Weinstein. Are you sure?
Yes, the store.
I'm not sure. There could be. I don't know. There's also another guy. I think maybe it's him. But he wrote like a whole thing about how the roots of Superman and everything, and all the comics are basically, the guy was Jewish. Superman was supposed to be like Mashiach, like literally he's got the cape, it's supposed to be a talis. Like he did his research. Like it's not a joke. Like the guy who wrote it was mamish basing it on like his Zaidi and the whole like mystery of like the Mashiach and everything. He wrote a book about it. It's not a joke, and it was like checked out, and it's a fact. Like all these like deep, real like ideas that the society can't shake them because they just like keep ringing true over and over again. It's because they are true. Anyway, you want to say something, or should we go on? Someone was about to say something.
So his name, instead of Clark Kent, it was Ken Cantor.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Let's not get overboard there. So anyway, this is the idea.
But with ISIS, they have no sparks in them.
Which means they're not.
They just fall over.
Yeah,
It's like pushing.
I think one time the Rabbi said it's like a house of cards.
Yeah.
It could be a mamish palace. If you've ever seen like a real like professional house of cards, like it's like mamish a masterpiece. But like it's not a house. It has no foundation. You can just blow on and the whole thing falls over. That's what it is. It's not really strong. It's not an insurmountable enemy like once upon a time. It's just because we're not doing good, like you said, that it sucks both ways. If we don't like bring the Mashiach, so what? It's not going to happen by itself. It just like remains like this darkness. But the darkness is not a thing. Sometimes darkness can be a thing. Darkness is a thing, and it has power. But sometimes darkness is just the absence of light. If you shine more light, the darkness goes away. So that's what the Rebbe said is going on right now. It's just basically just filling a void, waiting for us to do something good. But it's not itself, it has its own existence to it. Which is exciting. We're in good times. We just have to get up off our tuches and do something. All right. So, where did we get up to? Mitzada Oros to keep. I think we finished. Hey, right? Okay. Hey, let's go on. We have a few more minutes. Yeshno Orofen Bazeh. But there's another way of looking at it. Another manner. The Yisa Bazor, as it says in the Zohar. Even though Hashem waits for the wicked until they feel their sin, Mikol Makom, nevertheless, when they're paining and torturing the Jewish people, so Hashem makes them a judgment, even though they didn't feel their sin yet. In other words, this is like we said before, like if God goes with you, then even if because He's higher than Tikkun and Tohu. So even though if they start making real problems for us, it's already, they're overstepping their bounds, and Hashem steps in. V'hainu sha'ameitzu l'Yisrael al yedei Rishaim, that the pain of the Jewish people that happens through these wicked, mevi es pulaso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it brings the deed of Hashem, liyos haduch Rishaim tachtam, to make it so that the strength of God is with us. Like, it's not something that we would have naturally. So it really, they trigger their own downfall when they take it out on us too hard. Umosif Tzemach Tzedek od inyan alpi nigla, and the Tzemach Tzedek brings another matter. He says, according to Nigla, as it says in the Yerushalmi, v'huva b'tosfos b'kiddushin. It's also brought, I guess, in the Bavli in Kiddushin, in the Tosfos there. It says Daf Lamentes. Check it out. Ba'akum gam machshava ra HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. So this is it says in Tanya that machshava tova HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. In Tanya there's a whole like parak and plus dedicated to the idea that even a good thought Hashem will connect with action. Just as a side note here, just like in the Tanya, it's talking about that really if you meditate enough, it will create an emotion, and the emotion will come out, and like your thought, speech, and action will be enlivened by your holy emotions. But and therefore it'll raise up, it'll reach to high levels in Gan Eden. But sometimes you can't meditate enough in order to connect your thought to your emotions. It's just like not in the power of every person, basically. So he says Hashem does you a favor, and He joins a good thought to the deed. Which means that instead of like having to channel and create a whole emotion, which will then produce a deed, the good thought alone, Hashem will do you a favor, and He'll sort of like short circuit, over circuit the thing, and just from your good meditations, He'll consider it as if you did the deed with an emotional arousal. Okay, so that's like on the positive side. But for the wicked, on the negative side, this is like an Indian in the Yerushalmi there, it says that Hashem will connect the thought to the deed for the wicked as well. And what does he mean here? Something different. Machshava ra, not tova. A bad thought Hashem will connect to the deed. And what does it mean? Im kain gam kasher rak choshvim latzar la'ik liYisrael, that even when they'll just merely think about doing evil to the Jewish people, Hashem considers it as if they did it already. But He connects their bad thoughts with their deeds. He makes it as though they did it. And therefore, if they would have been paining and torturing the Jewish people in actual deed, as we already said, Hashem would have taken out their good for them and like consider as if they completed their sin already. We just got through saying that So kamashla haluka shemotzetzes dam, like the example of the leech that we said before, that once they'll be filled with blood, they'll just fall off and die. Miyad hinofeles umesa. So im kain gam al yedei machshava bilvad. Hashem connects the thought to the deed in the wicked, their bad thought. So even by them thinking that they're going to take it out on the Jewish people and like making decrees, He makes it as though they're like a leech filled with blood and they die. Hashem considers as if they took out the good from them already, even though they haven't actually done their evil. As if they've already fulfilled their wickedness. Therefore, they automatically become subdued. They become, so to speak, subjugated to our domination. Just by them thinking bad thoughts about us, they get themselves into the situation where they've given up their spark. And that's also why it says in the Megillah, like the whole story of Purim is basically an example of this, right? Because Haman wanted to do all these things to us. Since he didn't actually go ahead and take it out on the Jews, seemingly you could say he still had his power in him. Why were we able to take him down? So this is a very significant part of the mimer, and it tells the whole story of Purim. Because Haman thought to do bad to the Jews, Hashem joined his thought to his action, and he ran out of his power right then to subdue him. Right, as it says in the Megillah, Yashuv machshvaso hara asher chashav al ayudim al rosho. Right, it says that Hashem returned the evil thought of Haman, that he thought to do to the Jews. He turned that on his head. He turned it over on his head. Shagam machshvaso hara, even his wicked thought, machshava bilvad, merely his thought, nachshev is kilu asa, Hashem considered as if he did. That's why he fell, because it was as if suddenly he lost all of his power. Okay.
Ashtaroth had the dream, right? Because common thought.
Things before came down. There's two probably that didn't happen, but not too hard.
I'm gonna try it, but then like we have one that's like the one close on the right hand, left hand side, just like the handle goes around and around, doesn't do anything.
לתת לו לעצור לגמרי.